I don't just want to be in the race for clean energy. I want us to win the race.
Net zero. Oh my God, isn't it awful? Tell you what, we're not even a part of it. Look at the numbers.
Net zero, you know what net zero, they have no idea what it means, by the way. It's net zero. What does that mean? Nobody knows.
Climate change has become a climate crisis, and a threat has now become a reality.
Zero carbon.
East off. Hello and welcome to Zero Carbonista Series 6, The Cow in the Room. I'm Ian Collins, and this is your number one go-to environment-based podcast. If it's green, it's in. And it is that simple, Dale, although something that isn't so green this week has been the Conservative Party conference. I didn't really hear much of that vibe over there in Birmingham.
Yeah, I was when I heard you say that, I was going to say actually, and if it's brown, it's sometimes in as well, right? And then you said Tory Party conference, which, you know, probably the colour brown and the Tory Party conference, they probably go together fairly well. There was some green talk, but only in the sense of it being anti-green talk. There's a lot of talk about immigration, leaving the, the whatever it's called, that international legal treaty that all
the ECHR,
all the grown-up countries of the world are signed up to. And just bonkers stuff. I mean, basically, it was a long, drawn-out part of a long, drawn-out leadership campaign when at the conference was just a microcosm of that. 4 people in the running. There's not a lot of difference between them, actually. I think they're all losers. None of them seem to grasp the fact that they had an historic defeat because the electorate think they're a bunch of
And also, they were literally in the government. I mean, it's not like these are sort of some new backbencher that got elected out of a bit of luck who we'd never heard of, who went, look, I know where you guys went wrong, you simpletons. I can do it. I'll do the real stuff here. Right. One of them was the Home Secretary and the Foreign Secretary. The other was the Business Secretary. Generally, it was the Immigration Minister, for God's sake.
Yes, I mean, I love it. And of course, immigration is the big issue. And why does the Tory Party have so many people in it that are immigrants that hate immigrants? I mean, what's that about?
It's very immigrant heavy in terms of membership and those standing.
They're immigrants themselves, like Kemi Badenoch, like Priti Patel. I mean, they're all from families of immigrants, whatever it is, but they hate immigrants. I mean, Kemi Badenoch came here from Nigeria, and she is so angry. She even said that not all cultures are equal at the Tory conference. I mean, that's racism. She talked about Muslims basically not being equal to other people that want to come here. I mean, WTF?
But she's Kemi.
Okay. And it's a Tory revival show, right? And actually, you got to acknowledge that it really wasn't designed to appeal to voters. Good job, because it wasn't going to do that. It was really designed to appeal to the 50,000 Tory members that are going to vote eventually for one of them to become the new leader of the zombie party.
And why does it take so long? I mean, their campaign to elect a leader is longer than the general election campaign. I mean, literally, it's longer. It's about 3 times longer to elect one person in order to decide who they want to lose the 2029 election.
Yeah, I love that. I had a feeling you were going to say that as you wound up to that one. I think that's a great stat. That's a great stat. Probably a great place just to leave that bunch of hopeless people to their own devices and move on with our agenda.
Indeed. UK becomes first G7 nation to exit coal-fired power, which happened this week, Dale.
Yeah, the shutdown of our last coal-fired power station. I was about to say, I always find it hard to say, and then I proved it by missaying it.
That's all right.
It's good news. And actually, in the news today, just before we went on air, is a massive investment in carbon capture and storage. And Ed Miliband and Desnes are kind of joining the two issues together, saying that we're the first G7 nation to do this or whatever it is. It ends 150 years of coal use in our country to make power. And at the same time, they're announcing a £22 billion investment in carbon capture and storage over the next quarter of a century. It's a slightly bonkers thing, in my opinion, carbon capture and storage. I mean, I don't believe it works commercially anywhere in the world, and it hasn't done for the decade or two that it's been talked up as the big answer to how we can continue to burn fossil fuels in a planet-friendly way, you know. Roughly £1 billion a year. I've only just been reading the press release that's going to create 4,000 jobs, and I calculate that at £250,000 per job, and I just don't think that's value for money. I might be missing something.
But is this about just the remaining fossil fuel that is there, doing something with that rather than it going idle, or rather than leaving it to its own devices? Is that the thinking? I don't know.
They seem to have a few different strands. There are parts of industry that we can't clean up with renewable energy, like cement making in, big industry. And this is to deal with the emissions of, say, for example, cement making. And at the same time, there's hydrogen in there, hydrogen made from fossil fuel gas, which of course isn't green at all because it leaves behind all of the CO2 in the gas, which then has to be dealt with. It's like power stations. One of the projects that's going to be funded is a new gas-fired power station in Teesside that claimed to be carbon neutral but overlooked a 30 million ton footprint. And they're going to pump all of these other emissions, the ones they didn't overlook, out under the North Sea. I mean, I do wonder also about the security of the North Sea. We have room apparently for 78 billion tons of carbon dioxide under the North Sea. But one day, is that not a time bomb? One day, is there not going to be a problem? Just a little leak under the North Sea, we're just storing up a big problem for future generations. I don't know. But I think carbon capture and storage. Yeah, sorry, I'm sharp. You have a go. Go on.
No, I was just going to throw to the next one here, which is sea-based, but it's salmon we're talking about here, or water-based. Dumped salmon turns Scottish beach into toxic wasteland.
This is a lovely story if you love really dirty, horrible things. I love it because it kind of exposes the dark side of the salmon farming industry, and that needs exposing because people think, fish is a decent food choice, it's better than red meat, which it is, and that farmed salmon is better than wild salmon, which it isn't. But the dark secret at the heart of the salmon industry is something like a 30% mortality rate. 1 in 3 of all farmed salmon die because they're kept in cramped cages, they get diseases, they live next to each other with diseases, and just thousands and thousands of them die every year. And they're being dumped in a mass grave in the Orkneys, in basically sand, in a sand pit. You couldn't think of a worse place to put diseased fish by the millions, probably.
On the beach.
Yeah, on the beach. And it's literally, there are rivers of salmon juice, diseased salmon juice running down the beach into the sea from this pit. And it's had this site has had a 10-year derogation from normal environment regulations that don't allow this because it's a biohazard and a human hazard, biohazard for the environment and wildlife and stuff like that. They had a derogation for 10 years. When it finally ended in January this year, they didn't stop. And so we shot some footage of them dumping these salmon in this mass grave, open pit, whatever it is. And ITV have run it today. In fact, they're going to run it just after we finish speaking.
We will watch, and you can watch it back for those who don't catch it live. Here's a question from Duncan on X. Matthew Paris in The Times says the cooling towers from the last coal power station should be left standing as Britain's pyramids. What do you reckon?
Oh, it's not a bad idea. It made me think of the collapsing cooling tower animation that we made probably about a decade ago, kind of calling for the end of fossil fuels and stuff like that. It's a brilliant series of actual video of actual cooling towers being blown up with a classical music soundtrack and some helpless, hapless little faces and hands drawn on the towers as they collapse. It's super. It's well worth looking up. I might get my team to dig it up and put it out on social media this week. But also, I remember being on the train to Europe recently, and I swear that some old gas storage containers, not containers, the big things, what are they called? The big towers, gas storage towers.
Yeah. The things that go up and down.
Yeah, I swear that some of those have been converted into homes, like flats.
Really?
Yeah, maybe there's something better we can do with the cooling towers than...
Did they leave a bit in there for free energy for the apartments?
I hope not.
Might be a selling point.
They looked really cool.
They did. Yeah, well, I can see that. I mean, you can turn anything into an apartment now, can't you? Pubs, power stations, and that. North Sea oil and gas firms in the UK are failing to invest in renewable energy. Now, so 3/4 plan to invest solely in continued fossil fuel production. And that's between now and about 2030. What are they thinking, Dale?
I think they're thinking business as usual. Where do we make the most money? It's obviously what they currently do. I think the global figures for the big oil companies are they investing something like 1% of the turnover or their investment money in renewables. They talk a very good game, a very big game about the transition. You've got Shell talking about it, BP and everybody. But the truth is a long way from that. They're spending bugger all actually on the transition.
Here's a question from Naomi, who says, Dale, thanks for continuing to fund and support investigators trying to uncover animal cruelty. We just touched on some of that. Can we help fund or support this work? You've done there's quite a lot in that area as well, from hunting dogs and all sorts over the years.
Yeah, we've got a new one coming out as well. After the Salmon one today, we've got some undercover footage of snares being used on the Duke of somebody's estate. I don't know if it's Duke of Westminster, some fella with a huge chunk of land. And we've got footage of a fox being snared by the leg, and they kind of, they fight like a wild creature against that, cut themselves, eventually die of exhaustion or hunger, or somebody comes along and staves its head in, kind of stuff.
The hell still uses a snare? What is it, 1658?
It's horrible, isn't it?
What is up with these people? Here's a good idea. Let's get a snare out.
Oh, it's horrible. We're writing to him to say, look, let's have a meeting, because there are ways that you can work with nature instead of treating it like a pest and create an amazing legacy, because some of these huge landowners have the biggest opportunity to help us bring wildlife back to our country.
Correct. I mean, they're in the perfect position. There are, I was reading something a couple of weeks ago, I forgot to save the article about, there are some of these guys, they might be squillionaires that, had money sent down to them from, great Uncle Forbes Hamilton Smithers from back in the day. But some have actually, some have done some really good stuff, because they realise, actually, we've got the land to do this, and they're kind of on board with everything you're talking about.
Yeah, definitely right. And to answer the question about funding, we don't have anything set up to accept funding from other people, but we're doing a lot of this through our Green Britain Foundation, which you can find online, and that is a charity, and that is able to accept donations. But I'll take this one to the team, because maybe we should have some kind of standing crowdfunder page or something.
A lot of love for your appearance at the Labour Party conference last week as well, Dale. And we did on the last episode, we put a little extra bit on the end, because I think somebody asked a question, what was the best idea that you heard at the conference? And then you just went, I didn't hear one or something. And even though this is your party, but you were kind of joking, and then you remembered something. I think we should embroider on that a little bit.
Yeah, it's a lovely idea. It's not a new idea, but what I heard at the conference was that it's been done, I think it was in Gateshead. I think it might have been a 6 megawatt project. And basically it's harnessing hot water from old coal mines, which brings coal back into the story. I think that's wonderful. I think we might have 150 old coal mines or something in our country. A lot of them run underneath towns and cities, and they just naturally have hot water in them. And the idea is to reach down using heat pumps, but different kind of heat pump, take the heat out and use it to heat homes. And we've started diving into the numbers, talking to the people that have been, pushing this agenda for a number of years now. And it looks like there's enough mines with enough hot water to heat a quarter of all Britain's homes, which is an incredible opportunity. It's right under our cities and towns. And it's going to be way cheaper than an air source heat pump program, which is the other kind of heat pump. And it could be a big part of how we decarbonize home heating. So I'm quite excited about it.
That is incredible. Here's one from David, who says, Dale, I'm behind you.
What?
Oh, no, sorry, Dale, I'm behind you on the calls to, I thought you had a stalker then for a second. I'm behind you on the calls to tighten up on the RSPCA assured status. I'm a meat eater, but I'd sooner meat become an expensive luxury in life if it meant that welfare standards were driven into the ground to fill supermarket shelves.
Well, fair play, David.
He puts that fair enough, I think.
He does, yeah, I respect that.
I think most people who eat meat would say, yeah, I'd rather there was less of it if I thought there was, no cruelty, if it was something I ate once a month, but everything's tickety-boo, if that's not a, kind of contradiction in terms, but we take the point.
But you know what? It goes to the heart of the issue, really, because we have this incredible cruelty in order to have incredibly cheap meat, which is at the same time then fueled an incredible consumption of it. We're doing some work now for my new book, The Cow in the Room, to track consumption of meat since the end of the Second World War, because that's when industrial farming was invented, particularly industrial animal farming and fertilizers and that kind of stuff. We're going to track consumption. We're going to track the decline of nature, the rise of health problems. And I think they'll all correlate over the last 70 years. But it's entirely right that we used to eat meat, once a month or something like that. And now it's like 2 or 3 times a day. And that's what causes the cruelty, because it's the only way to make it that cheap is to be utter bastards to animals.
Yeah. And back in the day, a human caught meat with the regularity or lack of, like a cheetah does in the wild. Every 6 weeks you might get something.
Yeah, tofu is much easier to catch, right?
Much easier to catch. The little ones do get in the net and try to run, but generally Generally speaking,
I don't know what you're talking about. No, I said tofu.
Yes, indeed. I was responding to that. Yes.
Yeah,
It was the kind of extension of the old haggis gag, you know.
Oh.
Here's a good one from Julie Dale, who says, Dale, I took a leaf out of your book and spoke up for the cow in the room at an online panel attended by the DEFRA Minister, Daniel Zechner, and heads of the NFU and the National Trust. So I asked why the government weren't persuading the public to go more plant-based, not totally meat-free, just plant-based, more plant-based, to have huge benefit for nature, climate emissions, and public health. So why weren't they going for it? The DEFRA Minister said he wasn't going anywhere near that, while the she just bottled it. The NFU guy claimed British meat was saving the planet due to lower emissions.
Oh, my God.
There you go. You've got it all wrong over these years, Dale. Listen to the National Farmers Union, man. Meat is saving the planet.
I love that it fell on DEFRA ears in the first instance, and then you've got the gaslighting farming organization that claims. Oh, I mean, I've seen these claims before. Honestly, they're bullshit. I think that's an apt term to describe them. Fair play, Julie, for raising that in front of that audience. And we've had a lot of incoming contact because of the cow in the room talks I've been giving. And most recently, it was from a bunch of medical professionals that are campaigning to change the diet in hospitals to make it plant-based as a presumption, and you have to ask if you want a meat option. And we've talked on this podcast, Ian, probably a couple of years ago about this being done in New York, and it transformed the consumption of food in hospitals almost overnight. Just a simple reversing of the choice. You don't ask for the vegan option, you ask for the meat option. They're campaigning for that. We're about to join them, and they didn't know that there's this rule about school dinners that have to be, have to have meat and dairy in them several times a week. Sure. I hope they're going to support our campaign for that, and we're just going to work together. But there's an awful lot of interest in this issue, and Lord Darcy, a couple of weeks ago, he put out his report about the NHS and said we have to fix everything around the NHS, including our diet. It's preventative healthcare that we need, and this plays to that agenda as well.
Let's do some X-rated corner. Beacon once again says, everybody's suddenly talking about some guy called Dale Vince, who has presumably oozed his way out of the machine that makes the Labour Party guys today.
Yeah, I never heard of him.
I'm going to Google him after we've
Who's
done
he talking
this.
about?
Is that all right? I don't know. He actually took time out of his own day to write that. It's just sort of an inane piece of cobblers.
Yeah, it was my lame attempt at humour. I've never heard of this guy called Dale Vince, but we'll let that one go.
Indeed.
Yeah, I mean, what can you say? I mean, it's almost a pointless thing to say. It's just like, what is it? It's just an attempt at being insulting. Well, it failed.
It didn't do well, does it? Hoodwink says, stop Dale Vince. If he has his way, there'll be no more sausages for kids. I think that's the general idea, Dale, isn't it?
No more hostages for kids.
Yeah, well, I never thought of that.
Well, no. We make the most amazing sausages for schools right now, actually, and kids love them. So it ain't the end of the sausage. It's just changing what's in them.
There it is. And final one from Shire Strike, who says, if you want someone to be angry at for your energy bill, blame the likes of Dale Vince. Sure thought, Dale.
I read this one as Shire Shite.
I think you're right.
But look, I mean, this is just a silly thing to say. I've spent decades promoting renewable energy. It's the only way we're going to get our energy bills down and keep them there. If you want to be angry at somebody for your energy bill, well, try the last government.
On that point, Dale, we hit the clock.
We're done.
But we will speak in a week. I can't wait. Can't wait. Don't forget, of course, to follow this podcast from your podcast provider. I can hardly do this next bit. I'm so speechless.
I'm speechless.
And, of course, follow Dale on social media, twitter.com/Dale Vince, on Insta too, and also on TikTok too.
Yeah, I'm not going to say it.
Zero carbon.
East of.